Back in the SNES era of RPG, Square Enix developed and released no small number of JRPG giants that went on to influence the future of the genre, but none did so more than Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger was a massive success, both with its era-spanning story and interesting combat ideas that, by the standards of its time, were revolutionary. Fast forward to the modern era of indie games though, and I almost wish it didn't exist. A common trend amongst indie JRPGs ever since game development became more accessible is developing games heavily based on classic experiences. You can see this in more high-profile releases too, like I Am Setsuna, essentially a Chrono Trigger clone by Tokyo RPG Factory, but it's most prevalent in small-scale projects like the two games I'll be discussing today. The two games in question are Chained Echoes, which is a solo development project that brings new flavors to old ideas, and Sea of Stars, a game made by a small team that disappointed me enough to want to make this video in the first place. In this video, I will be discussing differences in gameplay design, plot, and storytelling that these games have that set them apart from each other despite both being inspired by the same classic games, as well as the reasons I'm tired of these games being inspired by Chrono Trigger. So let's start with the one I actually enjoyed. That's Chained Echoes. In Chained Echoes, you follow Glenn, a mercenary who pilots sky armors on Volandis, a small island continent ravaged by essentially never-ending war. Through circumstances he could be unprepared for, Glenn is thrust into a struggle for peace spanning several lifetimes. Chained Echoes' overall plot has similarities to Chrono Trigger. It has an era-spanning story, ancient beasts that threaten the world since a time forgotten, and if we really want to stretch definitions, you can compare the church in Chained Echoes to the nation of Zeal in Chrono Trigger. While the plot of Chained Echoes has similarities to its inspiration, it does things on its own, with interesting lore and hooks that are far more fantastical than Chrono Trigger's more sci-fi-ish setting. Sure, the journey spans eras, but rather than time travel, Glenn and Len send their souls through times to live in new lives. Yes, it has a big bad monster threatening the world, but that's hardly even the primary focus of the first half of the game, nor is it really the true antagonist at all. The creator took the base of Chrono Trigger and built upon it heavily, adding their own creativity to the frame of inspiration, resulting in a fun game reminiscent of the classic JRPG experience. I really enjoyed many of the earlier parts of the story, and how many of them tie into the deeper meaning of the game and the actions of different factions. There's a lot happening here, and the foreshadow isn't always on the nose. It made me feel like an adventure story tied into its narrative quite well. The writing isn't always the best at times though. Killian's entire character arc is pretty lacking, and I felt like several questions lacked a satisfying answer. The work overall is very strong, however. I became attached to some of the characters, the lore was deep and interesting, and despite Volandis being such a small island, you don't really feel like you're in such a small place after all. In stark contrast to Sea of Stars. At this point it's very likely I will lose a few of you, but I think the plot of Sea of Stars is absolutely abysmal. While also being a game where its story diverges pretty far from Chrono Trigger or any of the other classics, perhaps more even than Chained Echoes, it feels like a middle school student's idea of what a fantasy story is. You follow Zale and Valerie, young children turned solstice warriors due to the day they were born. Wielding the powers of the sun and the moon, you must defeat the Fleshmancer, and his minions. Aided by wacky side characters with a lack of real personality, you make your way across the land and solve the world's one-note problems until you are betrayed by the Elder Solstice Warriors who help the Fleshmancer's minions to usher the downfall of the entire world, in exchange for what is basically a spring break trip to Miami. This is where I quit the game. In contrast to Chained Echoes' endearing cast, the characters here just aren't very good. You have two boring and inconsistent goody-goody protagonists with Valerie and Zale. Garl is their best friend and adventure junkie. There's a band of pirates that are all basically just one-note jokes and generally uninteresting characters. Oh, and also Sarai, a ninja assassin who obviously is just the pirate captain in disguise. But we don't ask questions here. No, really though, no one makes the connection at any time between Sarai and the pirate captain. Nor do they ever ask questions why this person knows so much about the Solstice Warriors and their inner workings for far too long. The characters are so uninteresting that I forgot a lot of their names and had to look them up while writing the script. Never mind that the larger supporting cast and the villains who are all pretty standard side characters and mysterious plotter types. Now, I've simplified the story quite a bit because I could rant about it for hours, but I promise you it's just not good. It's full of terrible, absolutely stupid decisions, boring characters who are only there to repeat the same single joke over and over again, and overall just nothing burger areas that don't matter at all. I wish I could say I enjoyed playing the game more than the story, but I'm not very good at lying, so let's just get into that and then compare it to Chained Echoes. Moving around the world of Sea of Stars consists of solving simple puzzles, climbing ledges and dropping down, swimming, collecting food, and battling enemies. Run-of-the-mill regular stuff. Where it starts to lose me, however, is that basically every unique mechanic the game tries to give me feels stolen right out of another game. I won't rag on puzzles, cooking, first attacking enemies, or even the somewhat overplayed concept of turning back time to unlock new paths. But what I will rag on is the Zelda-esque dungeons complete with the big chest that contains your special new tool. As you might guess, the flow of these dungeons is to complete one puzzle to get an item and then do more puzzles with that let you access the rest of the dungeon and then fight a boss. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Zelda has complete control of the puzzle games market. I mean hell, I recently played Bug Fables, a game that is not at all apologetic about being a Paper Mario clone. But Sea of Stars doesn't feel unique in its design at all. Well, except for the color-changing portal place, that was a really cool dungeon. I liked that one. In comparison though, Chained Echoes dungeons are pretty run-of-the-mill. Some of them have puzzles, and some of them just expect you to navigate a twisting layout and find your way through maze-like passages. But it does come with a twist. The reward board is a system that rewards you for basically everything you do. See every part of a map? That's a reward. Kill a bunch of enemies or kill them in a special way? You get rewarded. Find a secret? Another reward. The reward board keeps monotonous exploring interesting and gives you a reason to hunt down specific chests or goals. Every single area is full of different hidden passages and caves, which makes for an interesting journey, and a lot of revisits once you unlock Sky Armor, and you can travel around the map much faster, getting to stronger areas and dealing with more dangerous enemies. Okay, not every single area has a reward board, but most of them do, and the rewards for completing sections of the board are integral to your progress. There aren't any special items or tools to traverse quicker, but that's okay. I only started finding exploring an area a slog after I was nearly done with it, and then the serotonin of more unlocks on the board made the next area exciting again, as I rapidly filled up approaching my bigger goals. It made exploration simple, but engaging, and the world felt alive as a result. But what really made Chained Echoes such a good time for me was its battle system. It utilizes a similar system to Final Fantasy X, but it makes combat its own with its overdrive system. It works like this. The bar in the top right of the screen fills up with every action. It starts in yellow when you have no bonus. When it becomes green, you deal more damage and take less, but you have to keep it there. Different skills will have different effects on the overdrive bar, raising it or lowering it. When you raise it too far, it'll go red, and if it goes red, you take more damage and deal less damage. Every action, be it an ultimate attack, reserve character swaps, or defending, will influence the gauge in one way or the other. And many bosses have different ways to affect the gauge in unique ways, making combat an ultimate balancing act. There's only really two problems with this combat system, in my opinion. The first problem is that a lot of the time, it's just too easy. The other problem is Sky Armor battles. I'm not really going to go too in-depth on Sky Armor battles, just know that they're not very fun. In contrast, Sea of Stars doesn't really give you much to work with. With levels few and far between, and a lack of interesting skills, it's pretty much the same game for hours. This is Valerie's skills at the start of the game, and this is Valerie's skills when I quit. Notice how barely anything's changed? In contrast to the Chained Echoes combat, I find Sea of Stars combat is just uninspired or perhaps over-inspired. The primary way the game adds depth to its combat is its timed hit system. Every attack and skill has a timing where you can press a button. If you press the button, you get more damage out of it, more repetitions, etc. This feels very reminiscent of the Mario and Luigi games, and many of the attacks are actually just clones of things you might find in that game. Did you like kicking shells? How about charging hammers? Does that work for you? Press a button and time with your jumps, we got that, and it's basically all we have. Besides these skills that are essentially just copies of another game's ideas, characters have combo skills that they can do after spending enough time in combat. I'm gonna be honest though, I just ended up using the big heal every time, and rarely anything else. Turns out a group heal that heals your entire party to full is just really, really good. Where Sea of Stars does shine, however, is in its two systems that to my knowledge are pretty unique. It has spell breaks and its magical attacks. Every enemy can cast spells in this game, and when they do, a set of locked windows will show up. Guess the right damage type and you'll break a window and reveal it and the others of that damage type. Every broken window will lower the enemy damage, and if you break them all, they lose their turn. A few bosses use this by making genuinely unbreakable spells that you need to weaken if you want to win, but mana costs are so high and mana supply so low, you usually have to be pretty careful about using skills at all, making it hard to break anything early on and sometimes completely impossible. Enter the magic attack system. After some time, you'll start knocking little orbs out of enemies when you hit them with your regular attacks, and if you absorb those on a character, it'll apply their base element to a single hit of their weapon, or empower their next cast. These systems go hand in hand to make an otherwise boring and bland system somewhat less boring and bland. I don't have much else to say about it. The combat leaves me wanting and disappointed. I wish I could say it was more interesting, but when every single character essentially plays the same, and I don't get much more in terms of abilities, I just don't see how I'm supposed to feel engaged by this. Each of these games tries to take classic games to a completely new level, inspired by and building on top of the greats of another era, and if you were to ask me if I thought that was a bad thing, I would probably say no. So why this video? Why all of this? Well, I'm just tired of it. If you've browsed Reddit in the last few years or read Steam pages of many indie titles, you've probably seen at least a dozen games inspired by a classic game. It wasn't that long ago that Slay the Spire released, and suddenly every roguelike had to have cards, and when Hades came out, it sparked a new era of knockoffs and clones. Chrono Trigger's name is widely used as bait for the nostalgic. Some of the games that put Chrono Trigger in their ads aren't bad, and people love these games. It's clear that the Sea of Stars devs put a lot of heart into making it. The world itself is interesting. They love doing what they did, and I can't fault them for that. But I think making a game just because you loved another game stifles your own creativity. I see nothing wrong with having inspiration, but if you aren't building something unique and you're just falling back on people's nostalgia, more often than not, you're just going to fall short. I loved Chained Echoes for all the parts that felt unique and interesting, and I hated Sea of Stars for all the parts that didn't, in addition to the mediocre writing. Poorly designed characters and story bits that feel largely irrelevant, coupled with writing that feels like a first draft, make their unique world and ideas fall incredibly short. And the decisions that many of the characters make throughout the game just make it feel almost like rage bait. There are plenty of fantastic indie games out there in this genre, some inspired and some completely unique, and that's okay. If these games do something for you, that's great, but I hate to see a developer limit the scope of their vision because of a game that's over 30 years old at the point of making this video. Let me know what you think and how you feel about these games, and if you know any other games inspired by the greats of our childhood, feel free to let me know which ones you think are the best. Even if you think Sea of Stars is the best, let me know.